So, what made you want to do this documentary?
Uh, really two main reasons. I would say the first reason is really just me being a director in this industry, just up and coming, wanting to be a director. I wanted to really take a look in why it is that I wanted to be this and the impact that I want to share within future generations. And seeing Jordan Peele's recent movie Nope, another prominent black filmmaker right now. His movie Nope, it starts off, that's what his movie's about. The first person filmed in a film was a black man. He's riding on a horse, and Kiki Palmer's character is like since movies could since films could move, we had skin in the game. And I was like, wow, like that's deep on so many levels. And like really looking at that, you can see the impact from a movie that came out in 2002 from the first, like where we started, you know what I mean? So this documentary is really just gonna highlight all the highlights like throughout those time periods and how those time periods affected the influence that each generation had. Oh, and yeah, the second reason I needed the credits to graduate. So yeah, so yeah, shout out to Daniel Pope for letting me do this. But within that start, you have pioneers like the great Oscar Micheaux. He goes back to as far as 1919 with his first film, Homesteader, where he's literally is directing an all black cast, which is just like in 1919 you can imagine like how like a big of a deal this was. Like a lot of people didn't even know that he was doing this. He was all the way in the Midwest, so he's very unappreciated until like a lot of his films were rediscovered through technology and advances in filmmaking. But Oscar Micheaux is really like the first like Spike Lee in a sense, where he's depicting black people in an authentic sense, not through the eyes of a white man. His first movie that really caught my eye was 1925 with Paul Robeson, another up and coming actor. These two set a precedent with each other with having like all black casts like on their sets, and having not just all black casts but black people behind the scenes with lighting, cinematography, all these things, giving black people jobs. Like a precedent. This is before the Great Depression. Like you can imagine how important this was just for like generations to come. And with 1925, Paul Robeson's performance in that just electric. Like he sets a precedent just for like future actors with their roles. Like you see people like Sidney Poitier, Denzel Washington to follow his suit on how a character could take a complex role and really share like two dimensions of that, which you see in Body and Soul. You have other actresses at this time in 1920s and 30s like Hattie McDaniels. She becomes the first black woman to win an Oscar. Was supporting actress, but was an Oscar nonetheless for her performance in Gone with the Wind. But you just see like this in the early stages, even before the Depression and even coming up to this, you see a budding of talent that was just like wanting to burst out but just didn't have the opportunity to. But we don't even take the time to just recognize the others, like the Nicholas brothers at the time during the 30s, which were the first real like triple threat in Hollywood. Acted, danced, and sang. Did all three. It was just like set a precedent for future talents like a Jamie Foxx or like a even like a Chris Brown. You know what I mean? Like people who can just do all of Beyonce. People who can do all things who get held in this high regard. I think we've black people have been doing it since the 30s and 40s, man.
All right. So when you say impact, what's the definition of that? Like what do you mean when you say impact or importance?
I would say just like sparking the mind of the next generations mostly, with anything you do. And in film, you see this within every generation. So when you come into the 50s and 60s, you have people like Floyd Norman, who's the first black animator at Disney, and you can only imagine like the impact that has from his works in the Jungle Book and Beauty and the Beast. He went from like being like the in between like animator, like so you have your positions, like the first position the guy is just like going like that, then the seventh position he moving another certain way, the 12th position he's moving another certain way, and his job was to like draw all the in between like little like design and movements. Like he went from that to being like head storyteller in his own movies. Like in the Jungle Book he's the head storyteller. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, he was a storyteller, and then he still like animating to stuff like the Toy Story now. Like, this man has like a 50-year career within Disney. But besides that, in the 60s, he left Disney and went off, started his own production company, and started filming like the riots that were going on, like in the 60s and stuff, the LA riots, the Watts riots. And just for a man to like give up all of that and like put his own money down and like document stuff that was important to his community, like that's what impact is. And in the civil rights movements, it needed money and needed funding, right? So within this, you have big actors like your Harry Belafonte, who funds the civil rights movements. He funds MLK and all of his acts, his movements, his marches. He takes out life insurance on MLK to give it to his kids to make sure that they were all set after his death. The bravery it takes even for that in general, and to take a step further and even leaving Hollywood, just saying no to roles that he thought were diminish his all around just poise as an actor. You know what I mean? He leaves Hollywood, starts his own production company, and starts making his own films. I think this is where the rift between him and Sidney Poitier kind of starts, because Poitier is being in these films that, quite frankly, not even Harry Belafonte himself, that all black actors want to see themselves in. And at this time, Hollywood only seems to just want one black man in this role. They don't. One's enough. We already got one. We don't need more. But ultimately, where his influence is him using his platform and his fame to bring light to these issues, to bring light to the issues in the black community. And I think this is where people like your Floyd Norman comes into the picture as well when it comes to influence. He's the first black animator at Disney, and he leaves Disney, takes his money from there, starts his own production company, and starts filming the he was filming the outcomes of the MLK riots after his assassination. He went on the streets. Famous footage that was used for ABC at the time and like that. All the footage that we see of people getting hosed down and stuff like that back in the day, that was probably Ford Norman catching that. During his time in the 60s, it was just all the murder, the segregation, just the all-around dehumanization of black people. Black people are fed up, man. And around the time the civil rights movement started to happen, black people gravitate towards these figures because they were black leaders in the world. We had a path on where to go, and we started to believe that we can overcome these things. And this started not only in the civil rights movement, but you started to see this in acting and just in movie roles as well. Sidney Poitier becoming the first black person, period, to win Best Actor for the Oscars. And this set a precedent after that for just, I would say very well put together, clean cut roles for black actors on and off the screen. Sidney Poitier let his activism do the talking through his roles and just the way he was off screen. Always clean cut, always very well spoken. Didn't rub white people the wrong way almost, which at the time the black community definitely needed to be able to get into these doors. And I would say that's where that importance for Sidney Poitier comes in.
All right, so the phrase "born at the right time," does that mean anything to you? Does that speak to you in any way?
Yeah, it definitely does, because I mean, you see this just throughout just the generations. After the 70s and the 80s, after the effects of just like Reagan and Nixon and the laws and the Vietnam War and Malcolm X dying, MLK dying, all of our black heroes dying, in a sense, the leaders of the Black Panther being dismantled. Like, you see the wave of drugs and everything coming in. You see all this in the 80s. It turns from it's us to everybody kind of has to survive for themselves, in a sense. And within this surviving of themselves, you see like this wave of like individualism that starts. And within this individualism, you have stars that are born. And with stars, you have the first black star, in my opinion, which is Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy sets himself different from comedians that came before him. A lot of people would probably put like Richard Pryor like in that category. I would still put him in that category, but where Eddie Murphy kind of differs from Pryor is like, again, born at the right time. He's born just a little bit later than Rich, where Richard Pryor opened up those doors for him, and he stepped in and He kicked the door just right in. He flooded the box office throughout the 80s with starring roles that before Eddie Murphy, there was never a black man like saving the day almost. Like in Beverly Hills Cop, like he's saving the whole city almost. You know what I mean? And still like making white people laugh at the same time. Like this was the first time like this was done. So like during this time, this was big. And then after Eddie Murphy, you have even a bigger star in Will Smith, which he comes from being a rapper and starting off in his own sitcom TV show. He's being seen weekly to starring in his own superhero movies, literally superhero movies. Like he played a superhero in Hancock. Like, you know what I mean? He's saved the world from aliens in Independence Day. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is like black men in superhero saving like positions like changes everything. Like black kids are going to the movies and seeing like, oh, like I want to be Hancock, like even though he drinks, but like I want to have superheroes. Like, oh, we can have superheroes. We can do things. We can save the day. This is like born at the right time, creates more influence for the future generations. You have stardom in directors, like Spike Lee becomes like really like the first like black director star that there is with his first film, She's Gotta Have It, but then with his second film really would Do the Right Thing. His just like the way, again, born at the right time, he kind of has everything that his predecessors had, Gordon Parks, even Oscar Micheaux, just the hustle it took to make this movie and get the authenticity of just black life just at its fullest. But again, born at the right time, where at this time hip hop was really taking a full force at this time. So that unapologeticness from hip hop mixed with his homages to filmmaking, because he's a film student. He's a student of film to the end of the day. But then his own little flair on it, really creating like the Spike Lee joint, as we know. Like that's what really creates that, the old and the new mixed in a perfect culmination. Even with filmmakers like John Singleton, who really like took it a step further with hip hop, with casting hip hop artists, cast Ice Cube in his first movie with Boys in the Hood, which set a precedent for this term like hood movie, hood film, or like literally black cinema at this time, which for lack of a better like word, like depicted black trauma, but traumas that were very much so going on at this time, that the black communities were very much feeling the effects from the 60s and 70s of all the drugs and the war on drugs that were going on at this time, destroying black homes, black fathers not in the homes, all this really going on. John Singleton used to capture in his own way. Spike Lee's messages are even like true till now, you know, like in Do the Right Thing, like Radio Raheem is George Floyd in a sense, like the police like choking him out in front of like the helpless black crowd. Like you see that all the way from the 90s all the way till now. Like the messaging has stayed the same, and just the way he captures the realism, but also just the beauty of blackness, the beauty of black skin, black neighborhoods, like black style. Like Spike Lee captures that in a sense that we've never ever seen before. You know what I mean? Julie Dash does the same with her experimental work, like not conforming to the regular norms of filmmaking, like having the balls, for lack of a better term, for a woman to literally like not capitulate to just the regular filmmaking ways that the white men ultimately established. Like, and Daughters of the Dust is a true testament of that, and how it wasn't initially like a huge, like a big movie initially, but the impact that it's had like just through years of filmmaking and style just speaks for itself. And in this time period too, you have just like with all these messages coming out, you have a big sense of male ego in a sense, and it kind of leaves out for other communities. And this is where like the LGBTQ community comes in, and the Black LGBTQ community specifically always gets left out in these pictures like far too often, just because of the male ego and male pride. And then you also have women who are not getting a sense, so you just have like this one group who's really not getting a say. And that's where you have Marlon Riggs comes up with his documentaries and his wording. He makes it a point in all of his works to represent the LGBT community in such a way where they're not getting painted in stereotypical ways. Your directors like your Julie Dash come into importance where her ability to step out the box and kind of push just narrative storytelling to the side and just become a true pioneer in this non-narrative way of storytelling. Her She steps away from traditional black trauma movie making in a sense that's very popular at this time with your Spike Lees and your John Singletons, and starts telling stories about black women and how different aspects of black womanhood come into play. Her first movie, Illusions, in 1982, was about a mixed black woman trying to find her way about passing and being black in the movie industry. And I think this is very sort of autobiographical. I think this was a foreshadowing to how Julie Dash's life would be in the movie industry, in like her acceptance almost as a black woman, also as a mixed black woman as well. And then about 10 years later, with her release Daughters of the Dust, which we all know, she becomes the first black woman with her movie majorly released in major movie theaters. Her and Marlon Riggs himself challenging this patriarchy of the male heterosexual role in these movies, and how violence and just the search for power in these movies is like as the central theme doesn't really resonate with everyone at that matter, not just young black men in these communities. It also misses your LGBTQ community. It also misses females in this community. It also misses young men that just don't have that bravado manner with them. You know what I mean? And I think this is where your Marlon Riggs steps into place, and he's somebody who's very influential within himself, because his movies, he doesn't. He said this one time himself in an interview where he doesn't really focus on the storytelling aspect of his films. He's focusing on more of the education in his films. He's making movies to educate the world on what young black LGBTQ people deal with in these communities, with your bravado-ness in these, how it is to navigate themselves in these communities with not only people in their community, with their families. Julie Dash, like, for black women, like, inspired countless future black directors like Ava DuVernay now, who's one of the biggest directors, a billionaire director, one of the only billionaire directors working today. So, like, this influence goes down. Being born at the right time, again, harping on that importance.
So I've heard you talk about the female influence in films. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So we definitely need to rewind back to timeline. Start with Halle Berry like in like the 2000s, after you see women directing and women leading roles, but now you see a woman actually win an Oscar for leading actress in 2001. But it took all the way from 2001 for this to happen. And prior to that, the first black woman to be nominated for this award was Dorothy Dandridge in 1954 for Carmen Jones, which at that time, all black cast in 1954, co-starring Harry Belafonte. Like, the role was provocative for the time, but very put Dorothy Dandridge in this position where she could have been definitely the biggest actress in this time, and career kind of fell short just because of the prejudice of her skin color and how it wasn't okay for a black woman to really, really, really be making an impact in the film industry at this time. And then on you have with Dorothy Dandridge nominated Diana Ross nominated, Whoopi Goldberg was nominated. All these years of women losing to their white counterparts. You finally have in 2001 Halle Berry win for her role in Monsters Ball. But within that, you still have people like Whoopi Goldberg who sweeps it. You know, she has an EGOT. I think she becomes the first black woman to win this, the EGOT, which is the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and a Tony Award, winning all of that throughout the 80s and 90s and 2000s with her roles in like Jumping Jack Flash and The Color Purple. She won her Oscar off that for supporting actress. Sister Act, countless other films that she's in. So as far like women really kicked the door open in the 90s with their award-winning just performances and their powerhouse acting. So as far as the future of black filmmaking as a whole, I think we're just gonna have a lot of stories that we want to tell, and I think that's just important as far as the this impact thing that we're talking about, the influence goes. As far as influence in the future generations, as far as up to now, we've pretty much seen everything that we can see. I feel like everything now is kind of being like repeated and redone. So as far as the future, we keep having experimental directors like your Donald Glovers, like Michael B. Jordan, like Jordan Peele, like Ava DuVernay. We're gonna have a future of people taking up their own things and making it in a way that can be seen to the masses. And I think this is gonna have more of an influence for as far as creativity in the black world. And the black population really needs creativity and like things that we need to see to be able to aspire to be greater than the image that the white world has for us, you know?